Hey y'all, James Roy here. Just wanted to let you know before you listen to this episode that there was a buzzing in the background on my camera, and so I've done my best post-edit to get rid of it, but I can't really do anything about it when I speak, so if I come across as a little staticky, that's the reason, and I apologize. I'll work to fix it next time. Thanks for listening. The moment we've waited for all offseason has finally arrived as the Texans are less than a week from opening the 2024 season in Indianapolis, so let's give our preview of the 2024 season.
To throw the punches away. He floats one wide open, and there he goes. Touchdown for a Texan touchdown.
Hello and welcome to this Bullpen bit. I'm James Roy. I host The Bullpen, a Houston Texans podcast. If you're not subscribed or locked in on that, you probably should be. Anywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube is where you can find The Bullpen. On this Bullpen bit, we're talking about the Texans' upcoming season. We're going to give a little preview, looking back, looking forward, giving a synopsis of what to expect, what could go wrong, floors and ceilings, all kinds of fun stuff on this episode. So let's dive right into it. We'll start with a look at the past. The 2023 season gives us a lot of reason to believe the Texans will do really well this year. The Texans are a team that entered the 2023 season with pretty low expectations, and it's hard to believe that based off of how the 2023 offseason went, given that they added DeMeco Ryans, they added CJ Stroud, Tank Dell. Some of these names, like Tank Dell, weren't exactly sure bets, but looking at the fact that they added CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans and somehow for 2023 were projected to do just as bad, if not worse, than they did in the previous season, speaks to how amazing it is what they were able to do in the 2023 season. A 10-7 team that wins the division and makes the playoffs, wins a wild card weekend matchup, and it eventually exits in the divisional round to the Ravens, which is not something that Texans fans are unused to. And this look back at the past, I think, brings up a valid point. In my opinion, the Texans would need to pursue a first-round bye and home field advantage throughout the playoffs in order to secure high odds of going deep in the playoffs in 2024. Now, the 2023 team was young and had a lot to prove. I think Tank Dell gave a great quote this past offseason, which is that last year the Texans were out to prove them wrong, and this season, they're out to prove everyone right. The monumental change in expectations from just a year ago cannot be overstated. There is still even more parallels between last season and this season. And the last one that I'll draw on is that, like I said earlier, last offseason, the Texans made a lot of moves that should have keyed people into how good they were going to be, but they were kind of hidden under this air of this franchise is bad, so they can't possibly fix it. So this offseason, those moves didn't go unnoticed. From the signing of Danielle Hunter to trading for Stephon Diggs, there was a lot of things the Texans did, some more sneaky than others, that will improve this roster. Now, while the Texans got better, so did the competition. If you're a subscriber to Strength of Schedule, then you're with me when you look at this Texans schedule and you compare it to last year and you go, wow, the competition is at least a little bit harder than it was last season. I can go through and name a few games: the Bills, Lions, Cowboys, Chiefs, Ravens. Those are all games that are significantly harder than any game that appeared on the Texans schedule last season. And so while the Texans improved, I think it's important to temper your expectations of them record-wise with the fact that they are playing a tougher schedule. Now, with that in mind, it felt like the Texans kind of played down to their competition last season, and they tended to do better in their tougher games. I would say there was some games they should have won last season that didn't flip their way due to inexperience or, like I said, due to playing down to their competition. So I don't know if I'd put too much weight on strength of schedule, but there is part of me that is really factoring that into my feel for how the Texans are going to do this season. Now feels like as good a time as any to mention that I will be doing a game-by-game review of the Texans schedule with a final record prediction for the Bleacher Report app on Monday. And if that's already passed, then you can go to my Bleacher Report profile through the link in the description of this video. And if you follow me on the Bleacher Report app, you can go back and watch the stream anytime to see what I think there. Also, if you followed the bullpen for any amount of time, it shouldn't come as any surprise to you the direction I'm going on that. I've been pretty clear about where I feel the Texans are, but I'd love to see you on the Bleacher Report stream. Now, we've spoken to the progression of this Texans roster over the past 2 seasons and how it stacks up to the competition, but let's take a look inward and maybe make some predictions or discussions about how this Texans offense and defense is going to look this season just from an internal perspective. When we look at the offense, we look at an offense that's run by Bobby Slowick, kind of has a run-first tendency, and in the past has not really been able to get the run game off the ground and has kind of relied on CJ to pick it up after they decide the run game doesn't work. Now, with Joe Mixon coming in, with Cam Akers showing out in the preseason, and with appearances from British Brooks, who I think could signal a better look at fullback in terms of run being the lead blocker for the run game, this run game looks to be improved. And also, all of the guys I mentioned are decent pass catchers, so they will also do their part in the passing game. As you know, CJ Stroud went for around 4,200 yards last season, with Tank Dell only playing 10 games and Nico Collins also being injured a couple, and a receiving core that consisted of Robert Woods, Noah Brown, and a John Mechie who wasn't quite 100%. There was more to it than that, but I think that kind of captures what we're getting at. Moving into this next season, I'd expect to see CJ Stroud, like he said, if you're open, you're going to get the ball. And I think he's going to have a lot more options that are open throughout the duration of this season. Now, what does that mean for this offense? It could go one of two ways. If we look at the run game, what it's going to come down to is that Bobby Slowick likes to try and establish the run, and he'll force the run until either it's realized that they can't run it anymore, or until CJ Stroud makes him not force the run by hitting it in the air. So with that, it's going to be incumbent on Joe Mixon and the rest of the running back room to, when given those opportunities, not make it look like the Texans are forcing the run. So that would involve, depending on how the O-line plays, right? That is obviously a factor in this. But regardless of that, the Texans running back room needs to make Bobby Slowick's decision to implement the run early pay off. As far as passing goes, CJ has a lot of mouths to feed, and he's shown the ability to do that in the past, but not quite to this scale. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles having, at any given play, you could have upwards of 5 or 6 players on the field that are capable of catching the ball and are legitimate threats that a defense is going to have to track. Someone is going to be open. The question is, can CJ find them? Now, on the upper end of things, if CJ does really well, we can expect 3 1,000-yard receivers in Diggs, Tank, and Nico. We can expect a high-end tight end room with Dalton Schultz, Brevin Jordan, and Cade Stover playing their parts to perfection. And we can expect a significant amount of receiving yards to come out of the backfield between Joe Mixon and Cam Akers, and even British Brooks playing fullback. Now, the question is, how many yards does that total to? And on the high end, I'd say somewhere just above 5,000. Now, it is CJ Stroud's sophomore season, and 4,200 was really good for a rookie. The question will become, can CJ actually do what he's shown capable of doing? And the common mantra that went around when CJ was being recruited and through the draft process was, if it can happen once, it can happen again. People looked at his Georgia game in the college football playoff and said that is what we want to see at the pro level. And so far we have seen that. So if it's happened once, it can happen again. I think CJ Stroud can take the next step and reach there. But on the low end, maybe we get a repeat of last season in terms of yardage. And then in terms of touchdowns, CJ Stroud was in the mid-20s on touchdowns. We're going to want to see more touchdowns, which I think could lead to more interceptions if we see a higher volume. But CJ showed capable of taking care of the ball. So on the high end, 5,000 yards, somewhere in the upper 30s, lower 40s on touchdowns. On the lower end, maybe we just see a repeat of last season, which is not a bad thing in the fact that he was performing exceptionally above average and as a rookie. And so those numbers as a sophomore would still be pretty impressive, but I'd like to see maybe a little progress, and I believe he's capable of it. So this offense just overall feels like it is well equipped. There is so much artillery in this room, and they just got to keep reloading and keep going. And I think they can put up a lot of numbers. As far as it goes defensively, the biggest question is linebacker. And I've been saying that all offseason. I've also been saying all offseason, I'm one of the few people who said the Texans should have used high draft capital to draft a linebacker. But I mean, the Texans have outright said recently they feel really good about their linebacker room, which will not feature Christian Harris for the first 4 games of the season, and instead will feature Azeez Al-Shaair, Henry To'oTo'o, and Delshon Phillips, Jake Hansen, Neville Hewitt, some combination of those guys, and rookie Jamal Hill. So a lot of the defense will hinge on how that group does. But as I've also said, I think that the remedy to this issue is simply put a consistent and lethal pass rush, which the Texans have put together the pieces to run. It's just going to be a matter of if it plays out on the field. If you look at the secondary, if you look at the linebackers, a lot of the issues that you find in those groups would be remedied by just putting pressure on the quarterback, not giving him enough time to even think about what he's trying to do. So at the end of the day, I could go into this deep and long explanation on the Texans defense and previewing it, but I mean, realistically, it's just, is the pass rush going to get there? And if so, the only group that really stands to be a huge liability on plays where the pass rush doesn't get there is the linebacking group. I have a lot of confidence in the secondary group's ability to cover. And I mean, I just don't have a lot of doubts in that pass rush. And even with the way the linebackers and blitzing is going to help that. I just think the pass rush at all levels is going to be the remedy to the problem. And when you see the Texans fail in coverage, it will be on plays where the quarterback has too much time. So I'd keep an eye out on that. And if early in a game you notice that there's not pressure being applied to a quarterback, I'd be a little bit concerned. After having talked specifically about each side of the ball, I want to go over the floor and ceiling for each side of the ball, just like in a general rankings perspective, top 5, bottom 5. Obviously, neither one of these groups is a bottom 5 group. So we'll look at the offense first. This is an offense that, like I said, CJ had a historic rookie season. The running game could have been better, and there's a lot of factors that I think got fixed. I mean, obviously, the offensive line this season is actually going to be what we thought it was going to be going into last season. And so I think they're poised to be, I would say, a top 15 run group. I think their ceiling is top 10 and their floor is maybe just outside of the top 15. And as far as passing goes, I think this is a top 5 passing group. I mean, if we wanted to say a floor, it could be more towards the top 10, but there's too many weapons in this room to believe that the Texans don't rank top 5 or at least top 10. It would be offensive coordinator malpractice to not get this group into those categories. And so I have a lot, like I said it a lot. I mean, there's a lot of confidence in this Texans offense, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them really pour it on more so than they did last year. As far as the defense goes, I mean, it was a top 5 run defense last year, and I don't think that changes this year. I still think it's a top 5 run defense. And once again, much like the Texans pass offense, I would say the floor is top 10. But I think where we'll see the most improvement from the Texans defense is going to be in the pass defense realm with, like I said, an improved pass rush. It felt like there was a lot of points last season where the pass rush there was the talent there to do it, and they just couldn't seem to put it together. Jonathan Grenard was doing a great job, and Will Anderson was learning and progressing along really well for a rookie, and I think got a lot better as the season went on. But there was a lot of times where the pass rush felt subpar, and I know that the PFF graph doesn't show that because the distance to the quarterback or the pressure statistics that they use generally tended to show that the Texans were getting pressure, but it just the eye test didn't really show that to me. So I think that with the improved pass rush this season and with the improvements that have been made with using Jalen Petrie where he's meant to be used, and the secondary in general, with Kamari Laster reaches his ceiling, and even with the liability that the linebacker group could be in coverage, depending on if Jake Hansen can channel his inner Blake Cashman and fill that role of coverage linebacker. I would say that the ceiling for this group is top 10, and the floor, once again, I mean, it feels a lot like the Texans run game, just outside of the top 15 is what I feel like their floor is. I think I said ceiling earlier. I meant ceiling for top 10. And if I mixed that up earlier in the video, I'm deeply sorry, but I'm not about to go back and edit that. It's been a good run of feeling like I said it right. So lastly, we'll talk special teams. I mean, the biggest thing is going to be if Frank Ross can implement somewhat of a scheme around this new kickoff rule. I think one of the big reasons that Steven Sims made the roster is his effectiveness in punt return and on kick return, and the fact that they probably don't want Tank Dell filling that role. And Frank Ross he's been on the team through all of the bad years. He's one of the few holdovers from before DeMeco Ryans became the head coach. So, he is an elite special teams coordinator. And, there is no floor. The ceiling is top 5 special teams unit. And I would be absolutely gobsmacked if the Texans did not rank as a top 5 special teams unit. And with that, that is pretty much it for my Texans season preview. Some final thoughts. I think that the hype is warranted. This is probably the most important, the most adequately hyped Texans season in the history of the franchise. Short of the 2011-2012 streak that was ended by unfortunate injuries and the such, this is a team that feels legitimate. Like, it's not like, I don't know, the 2019 Texans were just kind of, oh, wow, they're on this really nice streak and this is really cool. And wow, we're in the playoffs. It kind of feels like we shouldn't be here, but we are. And we're winning. Oh, wow, we beat the Bills and we're up 24-0. All that heartbreak there. That was never a team that I felt like was well equipped to make the run that this Texans team can make in 2024. So this is a team that could possibly be the greatest team in Texans history if everything falls right. And even if some things go wrong, this is probably the most stacked roster the Texans have brought into a regular season. And it's definitely a credit to Nick Caserio's general management. I remember throughout his tenure, a lot of calls for him to be fired. And I think he, given the benefit of the doubt, which is something the Texans ownership has done in the past with like Gary Kubiak and Bill O'Brien and a lot of other aspects, given benefit of the doubt, it felt like that era was behind us. But Nick Caserio getting that benefit of the doubt, I think, is something that has dramatically, I guess might be the better word, helped this Texans franchise make the jump into prominence. And I'm excited to see it take place this season in 2024. Well, thanks for watching this bullpen bit. I have been James Roy, and you can find me on social media at M1 Texans Fan on Instagram and at James Roy NFL on Twitter. If you're looking for a fantasy league and you are interested in something a little less conventional, the Locker League is live fantasy sports. I like to call it predictive sports trivia. If you think you know the Texans' tendencies better than anyone else and you want to put some money on it, $25 to join the Bullpen League. You can also find that at the link in my description on this video. If you go to the link in bio, you will find at the top the Locker Fantasy link. You download the app, search up the Bullpen, and go ahead and join in. It is only Texans football. That is the best part, in my opinion, about this format of fantasy, is that you don't have to watch anything but Texans football. You don't have to root for Josh Allen to have a really good game while the Texans win. It is just Texans football, and that is it. So thanks for watching, and as always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning into The Bullpen, a Texans podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.